Recording now. Okay. Hello, Servus. Oh, no, wait. I'm not even recording. Okay, no. It records it for you, Sean. Morning.
Morning.
Hello, Servus. Grissai. Welcome back to the podcast. He is a bird. I am your host, Sean Shelton. I'm here with my guy, Pichla Max, which means it is binge watching time.
What?
Am I saying that right? Been what?
I think it's not. You can't
It's
really
not.
say it.
It's not really for saying, right? Been
No, it's more,
watching, because it's like what just happened and then ching. So been
yeah.
watching.
Sounds
It
kind of
doesn't sound that great. Yeah, it doesn't sound that great. So we are here to review Tiger King and I, which is the additional episode of Tiger King. Max has behind him that bitch Carol Baskins and her husband Howard. I saw something about Howard that I laughed a lot about. It said Howard 100% keeps his socks on during sex. I thought that was
I,
very funny.
I've seen a meme too. Like somebody created it. I looked it up. It was not real. Like 2005, she posted something on Facebook where she married him, and she wrote like, "I can't wait to spend the rest of his life with him."
Oh no! Oh no! They seem to be very happy, so maybe she won't feed him to the lions. So the additional episode of Tiger King was basically a series of interviews with most of the cast. Max didn't get the opportunity to watch it. For whatever reason, it wasn't showing up on his Netflix. So I will be kind of giving my review or explanation to Max, and Max will be chiming in, asking questions, giving his commentary, which he's so good at during the course of the show. But first, it has been brought to my attention that I might have been too harsh on the state of Oklahoma. A listener of mine, shout out Felix, sent me a message with kind of a, by the way, Sean, in our episode 2, our part 2 of the Tiger King review, I went in pretty hard on the state of Oklahoma for giving Joe Exotic, Joe Schreifogel, 19% of the government or of the vote for governor, and that was the way it was depicted on the documentary. I did no research, but Felix did, and he said that he received 19% of the vote of the Libertarian primaries. So he was campaigning to become the Libertarian candidate for governor. So, and which, according to Felix, resulted in about 600 people.
Which is still pretty funny.
Which is still ridiculous. Like, it was still ridiculous. And so I wanted to make that correction. I will not apologize to the state of Oklahoma and the people within it, because this whole documentary was still facilitated by the state of Oklahoma and happened in the state of Oklahoma. And the state of Oklahoma is not one of my favorite states in the union. But I did want to make that correction. It wasn't as bad as I thought. Anyways, moving on to the interviews. They started, so basically, I forget the guy's name, Joel or something, was doing the interviews, and it was all via like Zoom, like what we were doing. So, and then they just went interview by interview. So the first interview was your guy, Eric Cowie. I don't know how you pronounce the last name. He was the head zookeeper, the guy with the long hair that you liked.
Yeah.
Okay. And so basically, he looks exactly the same. Like, some pictures resurfaced of like John Finley or some other guys, like the guy with no legs.
Ranky.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Ranky. That's right. John Ranky. They look completely different. Obviously they've received some money for this and used it accordingly. Eric Cowie doesn't look like he received a dime from this. He was wearing the same outfit that he had in the documentary. It felt like he looked exactly the same. Still has super fucked up teeth, and he's still the head zookeeper at the zoo. Now he works for Jeff. Which
did they already move it?
they They haven't moved it yet. They want to. I don't believe they've moved it yet. Because when the Finley guy dipped out of the construction, he was doing most of the construction work anyways. Not the Finley guy, the Stark guy. So they're still waiting, and I think they're waiting for the documentary heat to die down before they move and reopen. So he's still the head zookeeper. He works for Jeff Lowe now, and they asked him to compare and contrast Jeff Lowe to Joe as bosses. And actually, he said that Jeff is a pretty laid back boss, actually, and went on to call Joe kind of like an asshole. And basically, he was a really difficult man to work for, and like really like belittled people on a regular basis. Which may or may not be true, but I think Eric seems to be the most bitter towards Joe out of anybody, because he seemed to have like a real strong connection with the Tigers. And when it came out that, and even in the last episode where they were talking about how he would use Eric's trust in the Tigers to get them to come close to the fence so he can euthanize them. I'm sure Eric is very, very bitter. And actually the interviewer asked him, should Joe be a free man? And his answer was very strongly, fuck no.
Okay.
Which kind of surprised me.
I guess he's right. Like,
no, absolutely makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. And, you know, what was a common theme between all the interviewers, he always asked, who are you more committed to, or who are you more loyal to, the animals or Joe? And almost all of them said the animals. And that's why all of them are kind of bitter towards Joe.
But I feel like that's the only appropriate answer you can give it.
Yeah.
Like, not even if the situation was different, but the documentary is out already, and it would make you would make a fool out of yourself if you would say Joe.
No, that's true. That's true. But he seems to have some like legitimate bitterness towards Joe, which would only be understandable. And then the last some side notes he made during the interview is, first of all, he's never watched the show. He's the only one who's never seen the documentary, which I thought was interesting.
It's because he's got no internet connection.
Probably. And he said the other thing he wanted to clear up is he said he's never, ever touched meth.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Eric. You lived on that zoo with all these other meth heads. Your teeth look exactly like theirs, and you've never touched it. Okay, Eric.
I rest my case.
Yeah, exactly. If it looks like a duck and sounds like a duck, it does meth. Then they went on to interview Jeff and Lauren Lowe, which was a very, very boring interview. Just like most of the stuff that Jeff, like, he doesn't say anything. You know, he's a pretty careful man. So, but he did say that he was not happy about his portrayal in the documentary, which was also a common theme throughout the interviews. And he had the audacity to say he feels like the victim.
What?
Yeah, he feels like he's a victim of the documentary. Because in his eyes, he's a good guy. And he came in and saved the zoo from Joe, and then helped put Joe away, which he said he's very, very proud of. He actually bragged like to the camera, like, yeah, I put Joe Exotic in prison.
I don't know. I feel like that's the issue with every bad guy in real life and also in movies and documentaries. I feel like they have their point of view, and I think you're the hero of your own story in a way.
That's true.
Nobody likes to admit that he's an asshole or the villain.
But perception is reality, and however you view it is. And it's the main case in Joe. It's the main case in Jeff. It's the main case in Doc Antle. It's the main case in Carol Baskins. Like, they all think they're the heroes of their own story. I think that's a great way to put it, because even though they're all pretty unanimously bad people, they all think they're the heroes of their own story. He also said the documentary was fantastic, like fantasized at times. And the example he gave was like, I forget what episode it was, but when Joe found the bug in the office, where it was
Yeah.
like the little antenna off the building, he said it was like it was a radio transmitter. They had them on a lot of buildings to help with the walkie-talkie system, so they could all talk to each other at the same time. So if the which makes sense, like if the FBI or the federal government wanted to bug, it wouldn't be that big ass device with an antenna off the side of the building. Which when I saw it, I was like, ah, there's no way. But he said he gave, they both gave this, like, especially Jeff is like the snaky type of feeling and just didn't really say much. But the whole notion that he's proud to put Joe in prison, that he's kind of the hero, is such bullshit. Such bullshit. The next one was John Rinke.
Yeah.
He removed himself almost immediately. And I think they mentioned that in the final episodes. Yeah. So
when he went to stock car racing or something.
Exactly. So when Joe left the zoo, so did he. But it wasn't because he was like extremely loyal to Joe rather. He just had enough. This is a guy who's literally lost his legs serving the zoo and doing these animals, and I think he just had a fuck it moment. And apparently he said he watched Dylan and Jeff get in a 15-minute fist fight after Joe left or something, while Joe was about to leave or whatever the case may be. And he just said, you know what, fuck this. This isn't worth it anymore. But
Dylan.
Huh?
Dylan. Avicii Dylan got in a fist fight.
Dylan fought Jeff Lowe. And I would have loved to see that, because who fist fights for 15 minutes? I mean, that's a championship bout in UFC is 15 minutes. Like, or it's 25 minutes. So like a normal bout is 15 minutes, 3 5-minute rounds. Nobody, like, you can't fight for 15 minutes straight. Like, not even these UFC fighters can. The cardio it takes. And first of all, like, how awful do you have to be for the fight not to end prior to 15 minutes? Anyways, so he said he watched Avicii and Fat Bandana Boy get in a fight and just dipped out. But I would have loved to see that footage.
I just can't imagine it. Like,
no,
really.
Me neither. So then he also said he was more committed to the animals than Joe. He said he felt very underappreciated by Joe. So like Joe's like the Bill Belichick of the big cat world, and John Rinke is the Tom Brady of the big cat world. So
is that your comparison, or did they come up with that?
Mine, but it was alluded to in the documentary. But the one thing he said is, and also a common theme, that he's having a tough time getting used to fame, because John Rinke is a very identifiable feature of having these prosthetic legs that are very ornately painted. And he said, like, it's hard for him to go around and being recognized. He actually kind of doesn't like it. And he actually he thinks the story's not over. He thinks the legal battles are going to continue, and it's going to drag on for a while.
Yeah, but what is there to gain? Like, even if Joe Exotic does bring like, what's it called? If you get a rehearsal,
appeal or whatever.
Yeah. Even if he does, like, the evidence is too convicting.
No, I think Joe's trying not to die in jail, which makes sense. But he thinks there will be, Joe's not going to be the only one incriminated.
Oh yeah, I think that's.
There was other people that, even like Eric Cowie or whatever his name is. If you sit there and help Joe Exotic euthanize animals illegally for years, you're an accessory to crime. Now, I think they're probably not going to go after him because he helped testify against Joe. But there was a lot of people doing a lot of crimes through this entire documentary. So, and if Jeff Lowe is still a free man, probably not going to continue for a while. The next person they brought in was very interesting for multiple reasons. It was Kelsey Safari. So she was
The girl who lost her arm.
The girl who lost her arm. But the host introduced her as a him and started talking about he did this and he did that. So I was very confused.
Does she identify as a man?
She identifies as a man. And so the documentary got his gender wrong the entire show. And yeah, of course, right? And like the host asked if that bothered him, and he said it really didn't bother him at all. That, you know, he identifies as a man, and through the entire documentary, they address him as a her. Which like led me to think like, all right, what does bother you? You know what I mean? Like you're a woman who identifies as a man, and you now like this documentary series got pushed out, and everybody addresses you as a female, which doesn't bother you. You get your arm ripped off by a tiger or a lion. I guess it was a tiger. That doesn't bother you. Like, is that Trump with Joe Exotic's hair? Yeah. And
you might never be able to go back in the States if this goes online.
Yeah, it's not my. I don't plan on ever stepping foot in Oklahoma again, so I think I'm okay. But like, what does get to this man if getting his arm ripped off by a tiger didn't really faze him, and if being addressed a woman when you identify as a man doesn't really faze you? What does get to this person? I don't understand the resolve and the self-confidence. Huh?
I guess nothing is
probably not.
I feel like she's like those Hawaiian dudes, like super laid back, hang loose.
Seems so. It seems so. She also, or he, excuse me, also said she was more loyal. He was more loyal to the animals than Joe. He said that, you know, he never lost trust in the animals, but he did lose trust in the people that he worked with and for. Never had a problem, never had trust issues with the tiger that took his arm, which is crazy to me. Like a week later when he came back to work, he was still working with the same tiger. And the crazy thing is, he said it took 15 seconds for that tiger to rip his arm off. Which I didn't know how long I thought it would take. But 15 seconds seems like a long time. I always imagined like a pretty clean thing, which is stupid for me. But 15 seconds is a long ass time to have a tiger ripping your arm off. Right? Am I crazy for thinking that?
No, you just compare it to how long a football play is going on.
Yeah, but that's like 5 seconds. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like 15 seconds is so long. Right. Like you can really have an internal monologue in 15 seconds of like, oh my God, it's got my arm. Okay, that hurts. You know, like that's a crazy long time to just have a appendage of yours ripped from your body. The crazy thing is,
don't you think it's a little bit over exaggerated? Like 15 seconds?
I don't know. He said, no, probably not, because I would imagine the tiger would have to bite and then rip or tear. You know, I don't know. But he said that he had watched the video of it over and over and over again. And actually that Joe Exotic used it as educational film for new employees. Like, hey, what? Yeah. Like, hey, don't do this, or this might happen. So he said He said Kelsey, he said, or Saf said he had watched it numerous times and actually couldn't stop watching it, which is morbid, I think. He said he had no regret about deciding to remove his arm. Um, so, because some people were wondering, would you try to do the rehab? And he was like, nah, just no regrets about that. And lastly, he said she believes justice was served, or excuse me, he believes justice was served to Joe. Um, so kind of agreeing with the conviction, but he also kind of defended Joe in a little bit. And he said that there was a caring and giving side that the documentary didn't really portray. Like, especially as the documentary went on, they kind of kept painting Joe as this terrible person, which he sounds like he is. But like the Thanksgiving dinner or some other examples weren't really illuminated. Like the Thanksgiving dinner was like portrayed as this manipulative thing. And she said it was like completely genuine. He did give back to his community and really like had a caring side that wasn't portrayed in the documentary.
I feel like the first two episodes they did portray that, and I think it was just kind of storytelling and how it's narrated and how
Yep.
the videos are chosen and everything. I feel like if you take like those first 2 or 3 episodes and isolate them, and take the last 4 and isolate them, and then you can make up your own mind. I think it's both personalities are kind of true, maybe both a little bit over exaggerated, but I feel like that Thanksgiving dinner, or also some other stuff that he did right in the beginning, I felt that it was portrayed pretty genuinely.
Yeah, he actually came off as like a compassionate, like empathetic character, and then it in the first 2 episodes, it was like I was really like this bitch, Carol Baskins. You know what I mean? Like she's the antagonist in this whole story. I hope I used that right. I'm not sure, but she was
Yeah,
definitely like the person that you immediately didn't like, and then yeah, you're right. Episode 3 to 7 or 3 to 6, really, you were like, all right, Joe's an asshole as well. So then the next person they interviewed was Josh Dial, the campaign manager.
yeah.
That was an interesting interview as well. He
What's he
said
doing
that
now?
I'm not sure. Not well,
Back
not
to
good stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure he's doing great for the reasons I'm about to say. He said the documentary was fair, and portrayed people the way they should be portrayed. He said he knew Joe was batshit crazy when he worked for him or decided to work for him, but he did it anyways because he was a manager at Walmart. Like, what else did he have to lose? And then he started talking about the Travis incident. And basically, he was talking about he kind of used it as like a public service like announcement, or kind of like a help me announcement. I think he even mentioned a GoFundMe at one point for himself, because basically he says he really needs counseling and medication after the events that happened, and then obviously mentioned the Travis event, which is completely understandable. That's got to be a crazy traumatic experience. Um,
by having to relive it in the documentary as well.
well,
Is
you know what the crazy thing is, the documentary. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you think it was an accident or a suicide in the documentary?
I think they provided both opportunities, but like the way they got into the whole Travis personality afterwards made it sound like a suicide.
Or at
I think.
least, like just neglect at the point where he didn't care if he died or not. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, but he made it seem Josh seemed like he wanted to kind of correct that narrative, and he said it was a complete accident, and the gun that he was using, I forget the name of it. It doesn't fire without bullets in the clip or whatever the case. The mechanism doesn't work. And there wasn't a clip in the gun apparently, or the clip was empty. But what Travis didn't realize is there was a bullet in the chamber. So it's like he was telling Josh this, and he goes, "See, look." And apparently intending for it obviously not to go off, or proving that it. But my thing is, like, if I'm trying to prove that a weapon won't go off, I probably wouldn't do this. Exactly. Up, away. So that's why I think the original feeling that I had, that maybe it wasn't a deliberately planned out suicide, but it probably.
It was a bucket moment.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't care if I die type of deal, maybe because he was in such an unhappy place. But that was an interesting insight. And he had a phenomenal quote that I paused and laughed and then took my notes. He said, I forget why he said it, but he said, people in Oklahoma hate Joe. He said, Oklahoma is a very red state, which means like conservative state.
Yeah.
So people hate Joe because he's gay. And then kind of paused. And he goes, and the other stuff. It was like, oh, really? The other stuff. Is that how we're going to classify this? As the other stuff? I would have a feeling that there's a lot more to hate about Joe Exotic than him being a homosexual. I think the illicit drug use, the polygamy of two straight men, the abuse and murdering of animals, the complete murder for hire case, the complete vulgarness of his social media postings, the fact that he lit a building on fire and roasted alligators alive. Those could be some of the reasons. The other stuff, but no, they hate him because he's a homosexual. Stop it.
I feel like, even though I haven't seen it, but the way you just presented it, I feel like it was his pun intended. Like, he wanted to land a punchline.
No, because he sided with Joe because he also said he was gay. Josh is gay. So he said, so he was like, us gays have to stick together in Oklahoma because we're so few and far in between, and people hate us because we're gay. So it wasn't sarcastic at all. It was baffling is what it was. It was like, you can't say and the other stuff and clump in felonies all together. You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of reasons for people to hate Joe Exotic. Being gay is not at the top of the list, in my opinion.
Not at all.
No,
but
not at all.
I've been to Oklahoma. Maybe
just don't. That's my only advice, is just don't. Okay, so two more. The next one was John Finley. That man looks completely different, like completely a different person. It's crazy what first of all, modern dentistry can do, like just putting
I need to Google it now.
real, do Tiger King and I, John Finley, and he has this crazy beard, like straight ass hair coming from his chin. And he doesn't look exactly this. He doesn't look the same at all. And the funniest thing that I thought that I really had to laugh at was he can't really talk with his new teeth. He can, but he has a lisp now. So he has a speech impediment because he has dentures and not real teeth. But they look great, but now he talks really, really funny. Do you see a picture of it now?
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of a guy I know, and you also know him.
Yeah.
But I won't get into detail.
I've been told this comparison before, and if it is a Schmalahan Schmile.
What?
Is it Kyle?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been told that before. Kyle, for the record, I don't think you look anything like him. You look way more Eskimo than John Finley. But I have heard that comparison multiple times. Kentucky, Oklahoma, not too different. Not too different. He said on the zoo there was a ton of hookups. So, you know, he was hooking up with the receptionist and got her pregnant, and they ran away together. But he said the zoo was like apparently just an orgy of sorts, which I thought was another layer to living on this fucking zoo, that you're
Yeah,
taking care
that's
of.
what you get. Like you signed up for this. Like,
I
have you talked to Doc Antle about it before? Like,
That guy. When is there's going to be a documentary about that guy if he's not in prison?
you think so?
I think so. I mean, you can't just scratch the surface of this big cat owning, elephant riding, cult leader, polygamist, and then just leave it alone. You know what I mean? Like,
I think he tried to. I've read an article. I don't know if it was true or not. He was really curious about his portrayal,
mm-hmm.
and he was about to sue Netflix for defamation, I think.
Yeah, which he has every right to, I guess. But I mean, it actually wasn't Netflix as bad as much as it was the ex worker for him. I mean,
Yeah, but he said he didn't know that they're gonna interview her as well.
yeah,
He didn't tell him. So when he saw the footage of him, he thought the portrayal was totally different because the narrative was a different one. And then they didn't tell him that they have their his ex working
yeah.
girl.
Why would they though?
True.
But apparently, like the producers of this documentary, like really, not so much Joe, because Joe just wanted to be a superstar, but really kind of misled, um, especially Doc and Carol, because they explained it to Carol that it would be like Blackfish for big cats. And so Blackfish is a Netflix documentary about how awful it is to keep killer whales in captivity. And like I remember watching that documentary and just feeling awful the entire time. And like it portrays like why the dorsal fin of killer whales in captivity fall down, because it's a sign of depression. The thing that sticks with me is when they took the baby killer whale from its mom and the sounds the mom was making. Like you really felt like this is a terrible thing that we're doing as human beings to these animals. And
I've seen
actually,
that.
a lot of change came of that documentary.
Really?
Yeah, like
How
SeaWorld
old?
is really, um, I don't know, maybe 5 years now. It was one of the bigger Netflix documentaries at the beginning of Netflix.
Okay.
And so they explained it to that, like it was going to be that for Carol Baskins, which I could understand why she would be so interested in helping that. But she should have known when they started asking about her ex-husband and so much about Joe that that's not the direction that the documentary was going. Like, come on. And same with Doc Antle. Like, if this is supposed to be something that's praising you or talking you up, and you're asking him so much of questions about Joe Exotic and euthanizing animals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Even Doc Antle caught on to it, because he even was quoted saying like, "I'm not answering that question," you know. Um, but that is a common thing that like Netflix kind of misportrayed how, or at least we're not completely honest about what type of documentary they're making. And honestly, maybe Netflix didn't even have, like the producers didn't even have an idea what they were making. They just knew there was a story there and kind of pieced it together after the fact. So that could be true too.
Did
But
they also interview the first guy who should have done the
yep,
documentary?
he was the last one. He was the last one.
Yeah, because I
So
think
go
they
ahead.
probably had some insight because I think they hired him as well.
Um, I'm not sure. I'm not
Not for
sure,
documentary, but to have like a executive supervisory stuff
could
like.
could be, that's for sure. Um, but finishing up John Finlay real quick, he said he was also not happy about his portrayal, um, in the documentary, and it came off that he was just kind of this crazy drug addict. And the guy was like, well, you know, doing the interview shirtless was not the best like imagery. And he's like, yeah, but that was my idea, you know, like I wanted to show off my tats. So yeah, well, if you're shirtless, pierced, shitty tattoos, and no teeth, he's like, I was clean down that time. They just portrayed me as a meth head. It's like, yeah, well, you kind of portrayed yourself as a meth head there too, bud. So that just kind of tells you the state of mind he was in by doing the whole interview shirtless, because I wanted to show off my tats. Lastly, Rick Kirkham was interviewed, and he was the producer of the reality show and Joe Exotic TV. He just moved to Norway.
Norway.
Yeah, so he got out of after the studio burnt down, he drove back to his home in Dallas, Texas, and then that house burnt down, and he just moved to Norway. I think there's a girl involved that he met, but now he's a reporter and journalist in Norway. And even in Norway, he gets recognized, and like people stop him and ask him about Tiger King. And he really seems to be the most affected by
at least financially.
Well, not only financially, but like also psychologically, because he was a very, very successful person prior to the Tiger King, right? Prior to Joe Exotic. And they kind of touched on that a little bit in the documentary. Like he interviewed presidents, and he was a big time journalist. I also read something that he was a drug addict during his documentary, and interviewed the president George Herbert Bush, so George W.'s dad, about drug abuse while high, which is crazy. But he seems to be really, really affected by the whole thing. And he kind of talked about how often he saw Joe Exotic abuse and kill animals. And even to the point where like Joe was telling Rick to go get the cameraman because he was about to do some shit. And the story he told was kind of like as much as Saf wants to talk about how caring and you know, giving a person Joe Exotic is, these stories like the one Rick Kirkman told just completely kill any indication of that. So apparently this old woman came to the zoo and had a really old horse that was about to die, and you know, she couldn't really take care of it anymore, so she asked Joe to take care of the horse and let it have a nice ending of its life.
He took care.
And Joe was like, you know, of course, we have a lot of land here. We'll set it up. It'll be happy and nice. And so he consoled the woman. The woman left, and Joe looked at Rick and said, "Hey, go get the cameras." And so the cameraman came out, and Joe got his handgun, put it in the cage, and shot the horse in the head. And then looked at the camera and said, "Joe Exotic doesn't take care of anybody's animals." And then they kind of dequartered the horse and fed it to the tigers.
Yeah, which makes sense, but how could you? How necessary was it to film that shit? Like,
but that's the psychotic thing. That's what I mean. Not only is he a bad person, because he completely lied and then murdered an animal when he probably could have just, I don't know how many years that horse had left, or the you know, the financial cost it would have took to maintain him. But then don't lie about it. And then secondly, you're a sociopath and an absolute narcissist to want that to be on film, and just an idiot, because that's a felony. You know, like that's a reason why you're in jail for 22 years and you're going to die in jail, because not only did you do that flamboyantly and like right in front of your workers, you had people put it on film. And so but it really seems to bother Rick. And he even mentioned that he feels like he lost all integrity as a journalist during this process, because he saw so many things that he should have reported and he didn't, because he wanted this documentary to work and he wanted his reality show to work. And the fact that it just all got burnt to the ground. So he jeopardized his morals and his integrity for something that got burnt.
Yeah.
Which I imagine, like when he said he fell to his knees and started crying. I can guarantee, or I can empathize why.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he said, yeah. So he said that's why he had to leave and go to Dallas, and he said he was only on the zoo for a year, but like he still has nightmares about it. And the craziest thing that he said. And he said, like, the craziest thing of all is Joe Exotic was scared of tigers.
What?
Yeah. So he said anytime they did a shot in a tiger cage, either he was petrified or they had to like really drug the animals. So he said the shot where they were sitting on the throne and he had the two tigers next to him and the whole Tiger King thing.
Yeah.
One was drugged and one was old and blind because, in fact, he was really scared of the tigers.
How can you pull that off? Like,
I have no idea.
maybe he wasn't afraid of the cubs, but
That's probably what it was. But the grown animals, the full-grown tigers, he was petrified of, apparently.
crazy.
Yep. And so he kind of, yeah, all of it. That's what I mean. Joe is a master manipulator. I mean, he married two straight men at the same time. And then Rick kind of ended it with he just regrets ever meeting Joe Exotic.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds reasonable. Joe Exotic sounds to be a life ruiner. And think about all the people's lives like he negatively affected during this whole documentary.
You can't really name one like positive affected
Nope.
person. No, not a single one.
Not a single person came out of this documentary clean or in better shape. I mean, they're either missing limbs or financially in trouble or just had a miserable experience.
Or died.
Yeah, good point. So that was the Tiger King. I think Rinky's right that this thing's not over. Maybe there's another documentary in the future. Maybe Doc Antle has a documentary in the future. But I'm okay. I don't want to talk or even watch anything about the Tiger King. As much as I was like, the first 4 episodes were so gripping, the last bit was really kind of sad and depressing. And I need a break from Tiger King, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but the memes are okay. Like
the memes and the
memes continue.
The video you sent me about the 2K was hilarious. Somebody created Carol Baskins and Joe Exotic and Jeff Lowell and everything in 2K, and they were playing basketball and they commentated on it. It was super funny. So stuff like that, sure. But I don't need to see any real faces talk that were in the Tiger King.
Me neither, no.
Yeah. So I'm happy to put this to rest. What we're gonna do with this segment with Max and I moving forward, we're gonna have a quick turnaround. Okay, we have homework for you guys for this weekend, and the documentary on Netflix is one of my favorites. I think it's still my favorite, even over Tiger King. I've seen it once before, a long time ago, with Lisa, my wife. So I'm gonna watch it again. But it's a 1 episode. It's like a movie, so it's an hour and a half long. And maybe that's why it's better, because it's short and sweet. But it's an hour and a half of going, what the fuck? And so it's called Abducted in Plain Sight. So watch it this weekend. And then Max and I are going to review it on Tuesday. So you have all day today. I'm going to post this immediately. So it's Saturday today. You have Sunday and Monday to watch an hour and a half. And you're welcome beforehand, because it is absurd. It is the most absurd story, maybe second to Tiger King, but a more enjoyable documentary. And Max, you've never seen it, right?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Oh, you're in for a treat.
You kind of teased a little bit.
Yeah, you're in for a treat. It's unbelievable, and it's also about a subculture in America that's very strange. So, yeah. So until Tuesday, watch Abducted in Plain Sight. I will tag the link in this video, or at least the name of it, on YouTube. On the podcast, just go to Yeah, just search it, Abducted on Plain Sight on Netflix. You'll find it immediately. Hour and a half. Enjoy. And we'll see you on Tuesday. Max, thank you for coming again.
Thanks for having me, and have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too. See you soon. Bye, guys.
Ciao, ciao.